Hello and welcome to Movies for Dumb Guys. I'm your dumb guy host, Joe Johnson. And with me today is Andrew Walker.
Hello.
There he is. I thought you were sitting in that chair. And Tim Williams.
Dorks. They look like a couple of dorks.
And Denver Rochon is back.
Hello, everybody.
And today's theme is going to be the entire film collection of Quentin Tarantino, who has produced, or I should say directed 9 films, 10 if you split Kill Bill into 2 parts. So we're going to look back at his career. But I want to start off talking about my current favorite movie in theaters right now. A little movie called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
I'm Rick Dalton. It's my pleasure, Mr. Schwartz.
Call me Marvin. Put it there. That your son?
No, it's my stunt double, Cliff Booth.
Last night we watched a Rick Dalton double feature. All the shooting. I love that stuff, you know, the killing.
A lot of killing.
Anybody order fried sauerkraut?
Line?
Cut! Embarrass yourself like that in front of all those goddamn people.
All right, what's the matter, partner?
It's official, old buddy. Well, it has been.
Hey! You're Rick fucking Dalton. Don't you forget it.
I absolutely love this movie. I saw it on the Thursday when it was released in theater, the very first showing. I saw it 2 more times over the weekend, and I am obsessed with this movie. I can't seem to get it out of my head. I love it. It was very un-Tarantino-like. I mean, it had Tarantino elements, but he kept he'd zig when I thought he was going to zag. It was very light, very fun and funny, very likable characters. Even kind of the bad guys, if you will, in the movie were still likable and charismatic. And that's what I think I liked most about this movie. Even though it lacked kind of a plot, I just liked being immersed in that timeline, surrounded by these enormously likable characters, and I just absolutely love this movie. Tim, do you concur?
I like it. I did not have that reaction that you had originally. It's a Tarantino movie, and obviously I'm a Tarantino fan. So I was very happy to have a Tarantino movie back in the theaters, but my initial reaction was, once everything was said and done, that he could have easily shaved 30 minutes off. But then when I thought about it more, I was like, oh, okay, well, he's purposely trying to make it like a 60s movie. Because I've probably seen more 60s horror movies than anything else, but there's a lot of movies where there's a lot of stuff that happens for absolutely no reason in the 60s movies. I like it. I need to see it again. In pro wrestling terms, I think what he did with this movie is just pull a giant swerve.
That's your other show.
That's right. Yeah, that's what I mean. I said, for lack of a better term, I feel like Tarantino was trolling us throughout this movie. He would set up these premises throughout the movie where you think something typical Tarantino is going to happen, and it wouldn't. And I think that's what the fun was thinking it was going to go one way, and then it would go in a different direction and throw you off. And he kept building and building and then kind of letting you off the hook, and then building and building and let you off the hook. So that's why I thought it was so much fun, is I think he used his reputation to kind of troll us and cause us to think one thing and then have something else happen.
Bottom line is I just need to see it again.
Yeah.
I saw it on opening day, and like you said, because I went in there with preconceived notions of what was going to happen and expectations, and he definitely, switched things up on everybody. So
yeah, Andrew, what were your thoughts of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
I agree with you. I think you said it's a very subdued movie compared to anything else he's ever done. In the first 2 acts, and this is not a bad thing, but it sort of just kind of meanders, like you said. And for Tarantino to make a movie like that, it's subversive because any Tarantino fan is expecting gunshots, just over the top stuff.
Yeah.
Nothing super over the top happens until towards the end.
The payoff, yeah.
Yeah. But I love this movie, and like Tim said, I definitely need to see it again. Hopefully this weekend, and I think I'll be better focused on, because I know what's going to happen. I'll be able to pay attention to other things that are going on. It's not my favorite Tarantino film, but it's better, obviously, than 95% of the movie releases this year. It's an excellent movie.
Yeah, what I loved about it is I kind of call these types of movies my grown-up movies. Like, yeah, I like my Marvel stuff, and I'll go see the Star Wars stuff, but I like going to see a movie where I don't know what's going to happen. It's not a sequel. It's not a reboot. It's not a well, maybe it is a little reimagining, but I did not know what to expect, and it's very refreshing to see something like that in the theater today.
Absolutely.
Denver, what are your thoughts on the movie?
Well, let me preface it by saying I'm a huge Tarantino fan. I've seen every one of his movies in the theater pretty much on the first day. So going into this, I had high expectations, and I was not disappointed in any way. I think I would have to disagree heavily with what Tim said as far as, there being a lot that they could have cut out. I mean, you could say that about any movie. As long as, in my opinion, as long as, the character is being revealed and there's interesting things going on. I mean, to me, this movie was so jam-packed with, old TV clips, movie clips, fake and real, songs. We were talking earlier, advertisements, just so much visual delight, just in the scenery. And, maybe, Joe, you and I have the same affinity for it because, I lived in California and LA for a year. And so, when he's driving down certain streets, I was like, oh my God, I drove down that street.
Yeah.
Or when Sharon Tate went to the movie theater, I was like, oh, I saw a movie at that theater. I was probably sitting very near to where she was, So there was a sentimental element that I could appreciate. But just from a filmmaking standpoint, I love the fact that there was really no plot, like you guys have mentioned, because pretty much every other Tarantino movie has been pretty plot driven.
Yeah, with twists and turns, and you're like on the edge of your seat and you're focused. Where I think this movie was more of an experience. Like it almost like took you back in time, and you were sort of living out the 1969 time period.
Yeah, it was totally character driven. And I think he's had great characters before, and he's had long movies that had that same kind of epic feel. But this is, I think, the first one where he's just like, I don't care about story. I just want to dig into these two characters. The one minor complaint that I had was they were promoting Margot Robbie as Sharon Tate so heavily that I was expecting to see a little bit more of her in the movie.
Yeah.
She was really, like she was the third lead, but like way down the list of the third lead. And without spoiling anything, once you see the end of the movie, you realize why she's not really one of the main characters.
Yeah.
And so that was my only minor quibble, but that's pretty low on the list.
It was interesting when I came into work after seeing it, and they were like, "Oh, what'd you think of it?" And the people at work were like, "What did you think about this Manson movie?" And I'm like, "No, wait right there. This is not a Charlie Manson movie. This is about two characters, an actor and his stuntman, who happen to live and work in Hollywood at the time of this historic event." And this, I don't know if you guys are going to roll your eyes, but I almost compare this movie to Titanic. Now, let me explain. What's his name? James Cameron created two fictional characters and set them on the Titanic to allow us to explore third class, first class, the coal bunkers, and every aspect, and it let us roam free within the Titanic, where if it was based on fictional or historic characters, we would have been sort of confined to one part of the ship. I feel like Tarantino kind of did the same thing. He created these two fictional characters and plopped them down in real 1969 Hollywood to allow us to go on the back lots and to see how these films and television shows are made and just the dynamics of Hollywood at that time period. So I think there's a reason why he did what he did, and obviously to put his own little spin on it. But
Kate Winslet would have been great as as DiCaprio's stunt double. Forget Brad Pitt. Reunite those people.
yeah, and the two characters, Rick and Cliff, they were just so, in my opinion, so enormously likable that the moments where you thought they were threatened, it caused genuine like terror. Like, I don't want to see anything bad happen to these guys. They were just really likable characters. I really enjoyed it.
You can pretty much bank on those two guys getting nominated for
Absolutely.
a lot of awards, especially DiCaprio, but Pitt also.
I think both of them will.
But
Yeah,
but
Pitt's got the cooler role and performance, but
But I thought
DiCaprio's
DiCaprio
acting
knocked
was
it out of
just
the park.
amazing.
Yeah, and the
Okay.
flaws, his stuttering and his anxieties and stuff like that. And really, I think this was infectious that those actors and Margot Robbie to a lesser extent seem to be having a blast. And so I was having a blast watching these actors have a blast. They looked like they were having fun on the set doing what they were doing.
See, that's another reason why I need to see it again, because they were building this with the preconceived notion of what was going to happen at the end.
Yeah.
With, so you still had a sense of foreboding, but then, wow, I don't want to say too
Well,
much
about
either,
halfway
but-
through the movie, I was like, this is the first Tarantino comedy, really.
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
Right.
And I was like, if this ends with the massacre of Sharon Tate and her friends, it's going to be the worst comedy ending of all time.
But it would be in his wheelhouse to do something like that.
It
you know?
would be,
Yeah.
and I think that is why I found the movie so fascinating, because here I was this whole time like uneasy, like how's this gonna end? Oh. But I'm having such a good time, and I'm hanging, and I'm laughing and enjoying myself. So to me, that feeling of anxiousness with levity, and humor, totally had me on the edge of my seat, and I loved it. You know?
And some breakout stars that I think I'm hoping to see more of in future films. One is the actress who played Pussycat, the hitchhiker that Cliff picked up. I found out just the other day that she's Andy McDowell's daughter.
Yes.
And she was fantastic. She was great. Margaret Qualley, Qualley. She was amazing.
Yeah, if you haven't seen the HBO show The Leftovers, you got to watch that, because she's one of the main characters of that show. It's the first season's a little bit tough to take, and the last season's a little bit wacky, but it's definitely worth the ride. So I would highly, highly recommend that.
And search for her name on YouTube. I stumbled across this lengthy commercial that she did for a perfume or something. It is riveting. She, I guess, was a ballet dancer or something. So she dances throughout this perfume commercial, kind of like a video that, what's his name did? I'm
Christopher
trying to
Walken?
Yeah, you remember he did a video where he did all this dancing? This
Or
commercial
Fatboy
is a lot
Slim,
like that. Yeah. So search her name on YouTube. The other breakout star was the 8-year-old actress. I don't know if she's really 8 in real life, but holy cow, she held her own.
To steal a scene from
Julia
DiCaprio,
Butters,
that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and she was spectacular.
Yeah,
she was
was
great.
She was great.
Hope to see her in more movies.
Well, speaking of cast, one of the things that I loved was that there was so many Tarantino-isms throughout the cast. You had Uma Thurman's daughter played one of the hippies.
Oh, yeah. Kevin Smith's daughter.
Yep.
Bruce Willis's daughter.
Yep.
Rumor Willis was one of the hippies. Yeah.
But then you also had Michael Madsen, who, was in Reservoir Dogs.
Zoe Bell plays Kurt Russell's wife.
Kurt Russell. Just on and on and on. There's so many great, I guess you could call them homages to his own movies,
Yeah, or Easter eggs, as they call them.
Easter
And
eggs,
that's fun, like upon repeated viewings, looking for Easter eggs. Like one thing that I did notice upon the first viewing is when Sharon Tate goes into the bookstore and on the counter of the bookstore is the Maltese Falcon, and she kind of touches it and pets it as she's talking.
I saw that and I said, hey, now I know what that is.
So yeah, I'd love, like I said, upon repeated viewings, looking for all the little Easter eggs. And I was surprised that at the end of each screening that I saw, the majority of the theater cleared out before the mid-credit sequence.
Oh, okay, with the fake commercial.
Yeah, I was like, oh, they missed that, and I really enjoyed that.
And then they even had the Batman commercial at the very end.
That was the final Easter egg.
I didn't stay for the very end, so it was.
It was a Batman and Robin.
They didn't show
promo.
It was just the
a radio.
Oh, I heard the audio.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it. Okay.
Yeah, so they played that at the very end, and there were a couple little Batman and Robin references throughout the film, and apparently Tarantino tried to get the Batmobile to be on set for that sequence with Bruce Lee, and they wanted the Black Beauty, but I guess Warner Brother owns the rights to those cars and said, no, we're not going to do that. But that would have been a neat little tribute to see the Batmobile.
Great,
so,
let me ask you guys this. Tarantino has gone on record and said that he makes two types of movies in his universe. A realistic universe that would be like Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, and then the movies that those guys would go see, like Kill Bill or
Inglourious Bastards.
Yeah. So where would this one fall as far as that goes?
Well, I mean, if you're looking at it from a purely technical standpoint, it's got to be both, because you've, not to spoil anything, but you've got the Inglourious Bastards kind of ending.
The twist on reality. Yeah.
Right. But it's not an exploitation movie in any way, the way Kill Bill or Inglourious Bastards again are.
Yeah.
But
there's a lot of fantasy elements of this too. Like you said earlier, Margot Robbie sitting in the theater looking at Sharon Tate on the screen. That's very surreal, and you can't argue that takes place in the real world.
Yeah, they did not reshoot those scenes. That was Sharon Tate from the original movie.
Yeah, so I would have to put it in the fantasy element.
And you've got, even though this was more of a moment of imagination, but you've got DiCaprio in a scene from The Great Escape.
Yep.
You've got, Bruce Lee, the fake Bruce Lee or the imagined Bruce Lee. In
the fake TV series, the Bounty, what was it? Bounty Law.
Yep.
So yeah, I would have to put this in the fantasy category. That it's the type of film that the characters in his movies would go see.
One, I think it might be a minor thing, but something that I liked at the very end, the type of music that played when the title card came up. To me, it screamed, "This was a fairy tale."
Oh yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's.
Especially putting the title at the end at that moment that never existed in reality.
Yeah.
That was amazing. And since you bring up the music, that was another thing. Pulp Fiction, one of my all-time favorite soundtracks. I would put this one not quite in that same category, but pretty darn close. I mean, hell, even Reservoir Dogs had a pretty cool soundtrack. That was another one of the many things that I loved about this movie. I was just like, oh yeah, vintage Tarantino.
Yeah. I had read that when he's planning his next film, he goes through his record collection, and that's part of the process, is picking the songs that are going to be part of the soundtrack. And when you think about it, some of those tracks that appear in his movies are now, in hindsight, inseparable from those movies. Yeah. When you hear "Stuck in the Middle with You," how can you not think of Reservoir Dogs? Yep. When you hear the surf music from Pulp Fiction, you think it's like they become almost like a character in the film. And there's a couple of tracks in Once Upon a Time that now when I hear it, I go right back to the movie. So.
And I love that he picks, I don't want to say obscure, but not quite as popular and mainstream of hits. Yeah. Like this last Stranger Things soundtrack. It was pretty much just a top 40 smorgasbord from the mid 80s, whereas Tarantino goes into those deep cuts, great songs, but not the ones that you hear every day.
Yeah. Well, the song that they used in the trailer, or one of the subsequent trailers, "Bring a Little Water, Bring a Little Wine," I'd never heard that song before. It is a great song. How is it even possible I've never heard it?
And I would say there's probably 3 or 4 like really classic songs that I never heard before and that I love. He throws in a few, the Simon and Garfunkel and a few other ones that probably everybody's heard. But.
Yeah. Now I want to throw something else out about this movie, and this kind of got me a little angry as I was looking on social media. There were a couple of critics. There's this inevitable Tarantino backlash where they're accusing Tarantino of using violence against women as a punchline. And when I read that, I got a little angry because, first of all, it wasn't just women. There were men involved. And another critic said, they needed two men to come to the aid of Sharon Tate to save the day for Sharon Tate. I'm like, wait a second. No, that's not what I got out of it at all.
They didn't even go to her house.
Yeah.
How could they be saving her? That makes no sense whatsoever.
They were defending their turf against these invaders.
That was a home invasion.
Yeah. And that's the thing. The Manson family that were coming in, they were psychopathic murderers. So how can you sympathize with those characters and go, oh, you're being a little rough with them?
To me, that sounds like somebody that has no clue what the Manson family did.
Yeah, and I sat there thinking they got what they deserved. These characters got what they deserved.
I was cheering. I was like, yes, smash your face into the wall again. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And that's,
when he threw that can at her face, come on, that was amazing. I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same with Inglourious Bastards, but it is what it is. It's these notorious historical people that are getting what they deserve in Tarantino's world.
Exactly.
I mean, if it wouldn't have been, if it wouldn't have been the females involved in the Sharon Tate murders, then
if
nobody would have had.
If he had fabricated, if it was a bunch of dudes that had killed Sharon Tate and he just injected some fictional female characters, that'd be different.
Yeah.
But they were there.
Right.
They deserved any kind of fictional retribution that they received.
And I think, the crime, the real life crime was so horrific and generated such outrage that I felt like for Tarantino, this was almost therapeutic to give them what should have happened in real life if only things would have gone a little different.
That's what I felt at the very end. I'm like, oh, this is how it should have gone.
Yeah.
I had kind of a Joe moment because when they walked up the driveway, again, I won't go into details to spoil anything, I started bawling because I was like, if only that could have happened in reality, you know? And because they did kind of a similar thing in Inglourious Bastards, I didn't really feel the same way because that's such a large scale thing, but they made this Tarantino made this story so personal, and you get to know Sharon Tate and her friends and their whole world that, it hit me way harder than anything in Inglourious Bastards.
And it was the happy Hollywood ending.
So
exactly.
A Joe moment. Can we call that a Joe-ment?
That's right. Right. Get teary-eyed at the littlest
Did you
thing.
cry in this one?
At
any of your
viewings?
viewings?
I think the only time my eyes got a little teary was when the girl whispers in his ear and says, "That was the best acting I've ever seen in my life." And his reaction to that moved me.
That was pretty good.
It was awesome.
That was pretty good.
Can I just throw one thing in there? This is just from a technical point of view. This might have been one of the first times I can recollect seeing. There are several times where he did a quick edit within a certain scene, whereas Leo's character's in his trailer and he gets mad, he starts throwing stuff around.
Yeah.
Did you notice the quick edits there?
Oh, the jump cuts. Yeah. He did that multiple times in the film.
And I'm sure obviously he's not the first person to do that, but it was very noticeable and it stuck out to me. But I liked it.
Yeah,
it was
because the rest of the scene or the rest of the movie has such a languid pace that when he throws in those jump cuts, it's like jarring because it's totally foreign from anything else in the movie.
And I think it goes with his style of I'm gonna do my own style. I don't care what the rules are. I'm gonna do this.
Yeah, he did the same thing with Timothy Olyphant when the actor from the TV series comes over to talk to him.
Yep.
He's not wearing a hat, and there's that he's wearing a hat, and there's that he's sitting next to him, and I'm laughing. I'm like, I love this.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, that's we talked about this before the show, but to your point, he's throwing in a random voiceover whenever it pleases him. He's throwing in a fantasy scene whenever it pleases him. So he's just doing stylistically pretty much whatever he wants. And at first it was a little off-putting, like, this is kind of random. But by the end, I was like, oh, I see. He's just doing a whole movie full of his favorite gimmicks and techniques, and I loved it.
Yeah, and that's kind of his history.
I saw a tweet by a movie critic that I follow on Twitter, and he said, I'm just putting this out there, but the voiceover at the end, towards the end, is Kurt Russell.
Yep.
Is this film from the point of view of his character?
It almost, I mean, it makes you wonder why Kurt Russell was chosen to do the voiceover.
That's
whose perspective, who's telling the story. And if you're going by the voiceover, it's Kurt Russell's stuntman.
Yeah, because it's not like a random broadcaster, you know, telling this story. It's a character within the movie, you know.
So if that's not the case, he should have used Samuel Jackson.
Oh, that would have been amazing.
That was the one thing I did notice. There was, correct me if I'm wrong, was there any African Americans in this movie? Because Tarantino has a pretty much every movie he's done.
Yeah, he's been pretty diverse.
Correct.
But,
yeah, if there was, I don't think any
recall.
of them were main characters.
I have the cast list right here on Wikipedia. I don't think so.
Now, keep in mind, I read that the first cut of this film was 4.5 hours long.
Wow.
So imagine having to cut out an hour or more out of this film. And I think that's, that might be why we saw so many jump cuts, is he's like, all right, we got to get it down.
I'd love to see those other 2 hours.
I can't wait for the DVD.
Oh my God.
There's going to be tons of extras on there.
As a matter of fact, I don't know if you noticed in the end credits, he was thanking his, usual suspects, and Tim Roth's name appeared, but in parentheses it said cut. And apparently he played a butler or something in the film that ended up getting cut out.
I have that factoid right here because I came across it about 2 hours ago. It says Tim Roth, James Marsden, and Danny Strong shot scenes for the film but were not included in the release. Roth portrayed Jay Sebring's English butler. Marsden portrayed Burt Reynolds.
Oh, man.
I know. When I read that, I'm like, we missed out on something here.
Right.
And then Danny Strong portrayed Dean Martin.
Wow.
Oh.
So maybe in those
now
the
you got
DVD.
me more excited.
Yeah, keep your fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's there's some Burt Reynolds connections there. For those who might not know, Burt Reynolds was supposed to play the role that Bruce Dern played, George Spahn, and he died just prior to filming. And I found out recently that Quentin got his name from a character that Burt Reynolds played on TV. And so there's this Burt Reynolds connection. And so it would have been really cool to see Burt in that role. And as I'm watching Bruce Dern deliver those lines, I'm imagining Burt Reynolds delivering those lines had he lived. That would have been something. So,
well, if we do get the entire release of this movie, the unedited version, I hope he includes the Michael Jai White alley fight scene from Kill Bill.
That's a different movie. All right. Now, let's. Our goal was to talk about Quentin Tarantino's repertoire of films. I think what I'm going to do here is we're going to kind of go in chronological order, but then talk about where each movie ranks in our top 10 list. His first movie that he directed was Reservoir Dogs, but he had written some stuff before that. And most people, as a matter of fact, Andrew, you mentioned this, that you would consider True Romance a Tarantino film. Do you guys agree? Like, does True Romance count as a Tarantino film, or is he so far removed from the finished product?
He wrote the movie. Stylistically, it is so far removed from the kind of movies that Tarantino makes that I wouldn't consider that. But there are, obviously, since he wrote it, there are a lot of elements that, continue through his own movies. But Tony Scott directed that, and he's very stylish, kind of has that 80s MTV vibe to him, which is the total antithesis of Tarantino. So that's why I wouldn't kind of put it in the same.
Right. The way the dialogue goes, the way the action scenes are, it's 100% Tarantino DNA. But like you said, stylistically and just the way it's filmed, you can tell it's obviously someone else behind the camera. But it's you said you haven't seen it, Joe?
No, I haven't seen it yet. No.
It's very good.
I have it on VHS. You can borrow it.
But I don't have a player.
But I saw that at the theater. I enjoyed it, but I can't help but think if Tarantino would have directed, and along with Natural Born Killers too. I think if Tarantino would have directed those movies, I would have liked them a lot better.
I noticed that True Romance has a very high Rotten Tomatoes score, both from critics and audience.
It's a good movie.
Yeah.
It's, just
It's
not
very
a
entertaining,
Tarantino
but it's
movie.
very slick and Hollywood, and it's not. It doesn't have that indie vibe that Tarantino has.
Yeah. Now, the Tarantino-esque style, and that is now a word in the Oxford English Dictionary, Tarantino-esque, that was kind of set in stone in Reservoir Dogs in 1992, has all the elements of the classic Tarantino film. The one thing that has going against it for me personally is I saw it after Pulp Fiction, which is a disservice to Reservoir Dogs, because once you see Pulp Fiction, nothing else seems to measure up. And so I liked Reservoir Dogs, but it seemed like it was anticlimactic for me because I'd seen Pulp Fiction first. So it doesn't crack my top 5. It's in my bottom 5 of Tarantino movies.
You're killing me.
So, Tim, what are your thoughts of Reservoir Dogs, and where does it rank on your list?
It ranks at number 4 on mine. It was like, I think I'd mentioned this before, but I had heard all the buzz about it, and I think my first real exposure to it was an interview that MTV had done with Quentin Tarantino. And I mean, Tarantino comes off as kind of a strange guy.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, especially at that point, if you're not exposed to him, and I was like, man, who is this guy? This guy's a mental case, So I never bothered to see it. And then one of my friends just told me one day, he was like, hey, have you seen Reservoir Dogs yet? I'm like, no. He's like, okay. He's like, go to the video store. This was still VHS days. Go to the video store. He's like, rent this movie. Don't even read the back. He's like, just rent it and watch it. So I did, and at first I was kind of like, oh, okay. But then it kind of stuck with me. And then the more and more, then I think I rented it a couple more times, and I was like, oh, okay, I see what's going on here,
Mm-hmm.
but even then, you didn't know that he was going to go on. I mean, it could have been a one-off. It could have been a fluke.
Yeah.
But so not until like Pulp Fiction did I really appreciate it even more.
Huh, okay.
But,
all right. Andrew, your thoughts on Reservoir Dogs?
I also have it as number 4 on my list. This is a movie that I had only seen for the first time probably 3 or 4 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So I
Shame.
definitely did
Shame.
not have the chronological experience that you guys have. I love this. It's a great film, and you watch this film, and there are some technical things. It's like, okay, this is definitely this guy's first film.
Very low budget.
Yeah,
for
but
sure.
he at the time, think about how big it was to get Harvey Keitel to be in your film,
Oh, yeah.
and then some other up and coming guys like at the time Tim Roth and
He made a lot of those guys that were in that movie. They
Even
really hadn't done
even
much.
Steve
They-
Buscemi.
yeah,
Yeah,
he turned them
Buscemi,
into stars.
Well, Keitel, I think, I thought I had
He was
read
the
this. Correct me if I'm
producer.
wrong. Yeah, he invested in this
Yeah.
movie.
he was the
and,
one who got
Yeah,
it made.
'cause
Yeah.
he had gotten a hold of the script first, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
and I rewatched it a couple nights ago, and I kind of had to laugh. Not the very opening scene where they're talking at the restaurant, but where it shows Mr. Orange being shot in the backseat of the car.
Mm-hmm.
Larry! He kind of sounded like Miss Piggy to me. He sounded like a Muppet. I know it's a very serious role and a serious scene, but couldn't help but think of the Muppets when he was talking.
I agree with you. Watching it now, it is somewhat, that part is somewhat comical.
Well, it's a comical movie, though. I mean, it is a very funny movie, that opening
Mm-hmm.
scene where they're talking
Yes.
about like a virgin and tipping and the whole thing. I mean, it had me rolling. And then, just a little bit later, I was on the edge of my seat. And then when he's cutting his ear off, I was like,
I
grossed
was
out,
like
and-
looking through my fingers.
Yeah, I mean,
like,
that movie was a roller coaster. It took every
Yeah.
emotion. And I kind of coming to the movie from a different perspective. I was in college. I was in the throes of my movie watching days, and I was waiting for Reservoir Dogs to come out. It played only in one theater in the Metro Detroit area.
Wow.
So I went opening day and was blown away. I loved it. I thought, man, this is a classic. And so, yeah, I was from the very beginning. I was a total Tarantino fanatic.
So where's it fall on your list?
Number two.
Here are your names. Mr. White, Mr. Blonde, Mr. Pink.
Why am I Mr. Pink?
Who cares what your name is?
Yeah, that's easy for you to say. You're Mr. White. You have a cool sounding name.
Let's go to work.
Harvey Keitel, Tim Roth, Chris Penn, Steve Buscemi, Lawrence Tierney, and Michael Madsen. They're the Reservoir Dogs.
Hey, Joe, want me to shoot this guy?
Ah, what a cast. Holy moly. And that's one thing that so many Tarantino films have is you're watching the opening credits going, look at this cast.
Amazing ensembles for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So the next movie comes out in 1994. I didn't have the awareness of Tarantino that you had. So I remember a group of friends were going to the movie, and they said, Joe, you got to come along. And I'm like, what is this? I've never heard of this. And they said, oh, it's called Pulp Fiction. Come see it. And I'm like, I don't even know what that is, but okay. First thing I remember is the opening credits, like Bruce Willis and Uma Thurman and John. I'm like, this cast is incredible. And the roller coaster ride of emotions that I experienced throughout this film, I was sore afterward because I was so tense. And that movie changed the way I viewed movies. Like, I felt like I grew up when I saw that movie, like the stuff I had been watching before that was kiddie stuff compared to this. And I realized that movies can be a completely different experience with playing around with the timeline and manipulating the audience and causing them to feel these emotions. And I've never had an experience in the movie theater like I did watching Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction changed me as a movie-going fan. In my top 20 all-time favorite movies and number one on my list of Tarantino films. And it gave us incredible moments like this.
Ezekiel 25:17. The path of the righteous man is beset on all sides by the iniquities of the selfish and the tyranny of evil men. Blessed is he who in the name of charity and goodwill shepherds the weak through the valley of darkness, for he is truly his brother's keeper and the finder of lost children. And I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger those who attempt to poison and destroy my brothers. And you will know my name is the Lord when I lay my vengeance upon thee.
Two great performances. That's one of the all-time great speeches in movie history. But Tarantino's character, or not Tarantino, Travolta and Sam Jackson's characters, I think that might have been the first time where you got these murderous thugs who have charisma and I like them and I want to hang out with them, but they're killing people. Like, I've never had that experience before. So, one of my all-time favorite movies. Tim, your thoughts on Pulp Fiction?
Depending on the day that you ask me, between 1 and 2, but today I put it as number 1 because the more that I thought about it, like you said, it changed a lot of things. Almost like how Seinfeld kind of ruined me for sitcoms. For a while there, Tarantino and Pulp Fiction ruined me for other movies. I mean, to the point where I didn't even bother to go see Forrest Gump.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody was saying, I was like, no way. You know, it's like, I don't care. It's not going to compare to this movie. And luckily I had seen, I don't think it would have mattered, but, because I had seen Reservoir Dogs before, when they started showing the commercials for Pulp Fiction, I was like, oh, okay. I was like, that looks badass. And I think what he did, I was just blown away by it when I saw it. It was like he took Reservoir Dogs and just raised it. Yeah. And, I unfortunately I saw it with a local gal, and she was just totally confused. And she's asking me all these questions.
Travolta died.
Yeah,
Why is
she's
he alive?
asking me all these questions to the movie, and I'm like, shh. But yeah, I was just like, and like you said, I remember like, I don't even know what it was. It was almost like anxiety, like through that whole movie. And then by the time it was done, it was like, oh my God, I had just witnessed. I don't even know what I witnessed, But so at that time when I would be at like a party or whatever, I remember so many times I'd be like, you got to go see Pulp Fiction. And I would get a group of people to go, and we would go see like the midnight movie of Pulp Fiction. And not everybody loved it as much as me, but I think I did convert a lot of people. But yeah, so that's my number one, because I probably ended up seeing it like close to 10 times at the theater.
Yeah. Yeah, I dragged my younger sisters. I'm like, you got to see this movie. And as the credits rolled, they turned to me and said, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, what? And they said, that was disturbing. And I'm like, oh, my God. And like, I was shocked that people didn't see the greatness that I saw in the film.
Right. I mean, especially if you hadn't seen Reservoir Dogs and you went in there and not knowing what to expect. I had I didn't go see it with them, but I recommended it to my sister and brother-in-law, and they took a couple from church with them. From their church. And I got a call the next day and was like, what did you do? Apparently they just sat through the whole thing horrified.
That's the devil.
Andrew, your memories of Pulp Fiction.
This is another film that I didn't see for the first time until probably 7 or 8 years ago.
Why is he on the show? What the hell?
He's a convert.
But it's like you said, Joe. Obviously, I didn't see it when it came out. But looking in the context of 25 years ago or 20-something years ago when I first saw it, I'm like, wow, this, I'm sure at the time, really changed everyone's perception of film.
Yeah.
Like you talked about the not in chronological order, the non-linear storytelling, just the hyper violence and the super stylish things.
Yeah.
This is number 2 on my list.
Yeah.
I love this film so much.
I actually, in a way, I compare this movie to Citizen Kane. That Orson Welles peaked so early in his career with Citizen Kane that he struggled to follow it up.
Yeah.
And I felt like Tarantino's kind of had the same challenge, that he peaked with his second movie, and every movie after that has been compared, is it as good? Is it better than Pulp Fiction? That's a tough hurdle to overcome.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah. Denver, your thoughts on
It is my number one movie, no comparison.
Yeah.
It is also, I believe, the only Tarantino movie on the AFI Top
Greatest,
100 list. Like Tim, having seen it before, there was a lot of anticipation, and I was the bar for me with Reservoir Dog had been set really high. So I was like, okay, this is better be good.
Yeah.
It's got a lot to compete. And then, like Tim said, it just it went past the bar so far. It wasn't even in the same league, and I just remember, being so obsessed that I found at my local video store a bootlegged Laserdisc version while I think it was still in theater. And so I just remember, telling everybody, okay, go to the theater, see it. And then when you do, I'll make you a VHS copy. I must have made, dozens of VHS copies off my Laserdisc. It had all the Japanese subtitles and stuff on it. Just almost a flawless movie. I mean, it's almost hard to find any faults with it.
Ironically, the worst part of the movie was Tarantino's performance in his own movie.
Right.
That's a little hard to watch. The way he throws the N-word around and stuff. It's like, all right, take it down a notch. So ironically, that's the worst part of the film, which, it's still pretty good compared to most movies. But one of my all-time favorite movies.
We happy? Vincent? We happy?
Yeah, we happy.
Now, with Tarantino peaking with Pulp Fiction, this may shock you, But his next movie came out in 1997, 3 years after Pulp Fiction, was Jackie Brown. And I did not see Jackie Brown until about 2 days ago. Why? I don't know. This was a movie I just missed out on, not only in theaters, but on cable. Like, I don't know how I missed out on
Well, I
that.
think to your point of peaking, for a lot of people, myself included, Jackie Brown was considered a huge, huge disappointment after the heels of, Pulp Fiction. So it didn't do very well critically in box office.
Now, with the benefit of hindsight, having watched it a few days ago, I really, really enjoyed it. Now, the one thing that makes this particular movie stand out is Tarantino did not write it. This is based on a book written by Elmore Leonard. Now, Tarantino wrote the screenplay, and he added some stuff, but and Elmore Leonard called this his favorite interpretation of one of his books ever. But I really enjoyed it. But one thing that did surprise me is I had heard for decades people said, "Oh, well, this is Tarantino's take on the blaxploitation film." But when I watched it, I didn't get that. I didn't see the blaxploitation element. To me, it was a good story about a heist, about trying to get their hands on this money. And when I hear the term blaxploitation, I picture like the guitar, stuff like that. And to me, it didn't have those elements. The only real connection was Pam Grier's role, because she had played Foxy Brown in the past. But I wouldn't call this movie a blaxploitation movie. It's a very good heist film.
If you had the chance to walk off with $500,000, would you take it?
Yeah.
What do a stewardess, a gun runner, a bail bondsman, an ex-con, a federal agent, and a beach bunny have in common?
You're gonna come in on this thing with me. You got to be prepared to go all the way.
They're all chasing $500,000 in cash.
It wouldn't even be missed.
$500,000 will always be missed.
Let him get the money and then just take it from him.
She trying to play your ass against me, huh?
That was fun.
Yeah, it hit the spot. I love the twists and turns. It had me thinking and guessing who's screwing who over. Is Brown working with Sam Jackson, or is she working with the cops? And Robert Forster, I'm like, oh, is he the scapegoat? Like, I didn't know what direction this movie was going to go, and it made it really, really fun to watch it play out and see how it all came together. So I really enjoyed it. It did not crack my top 5. It came in at number 6 for me on my Tarantino top 10 or top 9. Tim, what are your thoughts on Jackie Brown?
Like Denver said, because of the other two, and then seeing this, it seemed like a letdown. Not that it's a bad movie. I mean, it's still a great movie, and I enjoyed it for what it was. And I don't think I even saw it at the theater. I don't think I saw it until it came out. So it's number 8 on my list. It's been a while since I've seen it. It's not one that I really want to revisit. I mean, again, nothing wrong with it, but maybe because it is more of an adaptation of somebody else's writing, it doesn't come off the same way as Tarantino's other movies. Mm-hmm. But one thing that I just thought of, but continuing the tradition of kind of trying to rejuvenate some actors' careers in this, I really liked that aspect of it, because Michael Keaton was in it too, correct?
Yeah, it surprised me.
And he hadn't been in anything for a while.
And they said Robert Forster rejuvenated his career.
Right.
Pam Grier, of course.
Yeah. And like you said, I guess it would probably be more of an homage maybe to the 70s, quote, blaxploitation movies. But yeah, I mean, if Pam Grier at the end would have like gotten like a leather outfit and gotten a machine gun and mowed everybody down, that's more what I think of too.
Right.
When it comes to that. But yeah, I mean, nothing wrong with this movie, and actually, I should probably give it another look. But yeah, but going from those other two, it's only number 8 on my list.
Yeah. Now, an interesting tidbit about the movie is Tarantino responded to critics who complained about the ultra violence of Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs. So just about every act of violence in Jackie Brown is done off frame. When he shoots Chris Tucker, it's way in the distance. And ironically, it still is shocking as if you were to see the blood splatter. Like when he turns and silences Bridget Fonda in the parking lot of the mall, even though it's done off camera, it is no less shocking. And I wonder if Tarantino made a point that whether you see it or don't see it on screen, it's just as shocking, or maybe even more shocking when it's done off camera. Because that was Hitchcock's thing, is he never really showed a lot of stuff, but the implication was still there.
Right.
So Andrew, your thoughts on Jackie Brown?
Like Tim said, I need to revisit it. I watched it once right after Pulp Fiction, because those were two movies I rented at the same time. And I've only seen it that one time, and it's, like I said, probably 7 or 8 years ago. So I do need to rewatch it. Just going from that memory, I have it as number 8 in my list. I'm sorry, number 7 in my list. But yeah, it was great seeing De Niro in that type of role. And
the second banana, that kind of surprised me.
Yeah.
Like he played the second banana in that film, and
he must,
how he handled
at
that.
that time, and still early in Tarantino's career, he must think, "Wow, this guy's the future of cinema."
Well,
and I want to get in on it.
I read that they did not get along on set, so I wonder if it was the veteran being told what to do by this young up and comer.
It might be,
yeah.
I don't have a whole lot to say about it. Nothing negative to say about it. I really liked it. Like I said, it's not fresh in my memory. I need to revisit it.
Yeah. Denver, anything you want to add?
I've got it at number 7, and to be honest, like from number 3 to number 8 could all interchange my rankings because Tarantino has not made a bad movie ever. They're all great.
Yeah.
So even though it's Jackie Brown's lower on my list, I think it's still an awesome movie. To me, when I first saw it, I was disappointed because it was a much more what I would consider mature and sophisticated movie. It didn't have all the gratuitous violence.
Yeah.
It was much slower paced than Pulp Fiction. The two leads were more old and wise, although now I look at them and contemporary.
My peers.
Yes, exactly. So I think it was just, my expectations. And because the word blaxploitation did get thrown around before the movie came out, I was like, okay, well, it didn't deliver on the blaxploitation element. It didn't deliver on Tarantino's typical violence, but all the performances were amazing. I thought Sam Jackson made one of the scariest villains of all time. He was great.
Hair decisions were a little questionable. That
very
weird
but,
red ponytail and goatee was distracting.
But it was wild. I mean, he was like, as much as you loved him in Pulp Fiction, you feared him in this.
Yeah.
So yeah, great movie, but lower on my list, like everyone else.
I'm going to do a little name drop. I don't think I've ever mentioned this name on our podcast before. When I was a young guy of 18 or 19 years old, I used to work at a public access studio in Hamtramck. And there's a couple that did a public access show called Out to Lunch with Art and Barb. And one day they had booked the studio, and they came in, and I'm setting everything up. And I said, who's your guest today? And they said, we're bringing in a local author. I was like, oh, cool. Who is it? A guy named Elmore Leonard came in. And I only had heard his name at the time, so I wasn't as impressed as I should have been. And now, again, with the benefit of hindsight, I'm like, oh, my God, we had Elmore Leonard in our studio.
I got to meet him once after Jackie Brown.
Oh, wow.
And it was in downtown Birmingham. A friend's dad was meeting him or something like that. And so it was just a very brief, hello, how are you? Nice to meet you. But I was like, whoa, I was awestruck. So.
Yeah. I'm not familiar. Is he from?
He's a Detroit author
Okay.
who made the big time. And one of my favorite movies based on his works was Get Shorty with John Travolta. That was a really entertaining film.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have to look him up.
So,
just one thing going back, just another kind of like local thing back in Pulp Fiction. Apparently, I don't know if you guys remember Orbit
magazine. Yeah, he had the T-shirt.
They were one of the first ones to interview him for Reservoir Dogs, and he is wearing the Orbit T-shirt in Reservoir Dogs as Jimmy.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's a
That's
good little trivia. And I did have a Sam Jackson experience if we're name dropping. I was out when I lived out in California. I had this crappy little Chevy Metro, a little tiny like sub car, and I was stopped at a light, and then this I don't know what it was. I'm not a car guy, but it looked like some really super expensive Porsche. And I'm just looking up and down the car, and I'm like, oh my God, my jaw's hitting the ground. And I look up at the driver, and it's Samuel Jackson, and he looks over at me, and he just kind of flares his nostril, gives me one of those Sam Jackson looks, and then drives away. And I just stood there. I didn't even drive. I was just like, oh. So, thank you.
That's awesome. All right. Boy, there's a 6-year hiatus between Jackie Brown and his next film.
My friends and I, we were the creme de la creme in an exclusive industry. And we all worked for this man, Bill. Then one day, I decided to leave, settle down, and start a new life. But when I tried to get out, they did me in. Don't you ever wake up. I guess they should have tried a little harder.
So I suppose it's a little late for an apology, huh?
You suppose correctly. Now it's kill or be killed.
You have every right to want to get even.
Get even?
Even, Stephen? I would have to kill you. That'd be about square.
And I choose kill.
So Tarantino shoots this movie. Again, the first cut clocks in at over 4 hours. So he decides to split it into 2 movies, which meant he had to renegotiate the deal with all the actors and everybody involved because they now had to get paid for 2 movies. This is definitely a movie I made sure I was in the theater opening weekend to see this. And so Volume 1 comes out, and I describe Kill Bill as a work of art. It is an amazing movie visually, and I love martial arts movies, so I love this tribute to martial arts films with what's her name? Beatrix, the bride. Working with the sensei and all that stuff. And again, that had sort of a fantasy element to it too. So I loved part 1. I enjoyed part 2, not as much as part 1, but I kind of lumped these 2 movies together, and I put this at number 2 on my Tarantino list. I absolutely love the Kill Bill movies. A month or so ago, I watched them again back to back and thought, what an amazing experience watching these movies. And my nephew, who is just recently turned 21, he recently watched Kill Bill, and he absolutely loved it. And so now he's like a Tarantino guy. He loved Pulp Fiction. He loved Kill Bill. He loved Hollywood. So, yeah, Kill Bill is number 2 on my list. I love all the performances and the stylized fight sequences and all that stuff. It's just great. Tim, your thoughts on Kill Bill?
I did not separate them just because they're so similar, and I've never bought them because I'm still holding out for the whole bloody affair.
Me too.
to be released.
It's listed on IMDb.
I know.
So it's like,
I think,
when are you going to do
I
it?
could be wrong, but I thought they had released it in Japan or something. But I could be wrong,
Yeah.
or maybe they just screened it there or something at one point. I don't know, but it does exist, so I'm still waiting. But this was number 5 on my list, and yeah, I mean, kind of like Denver said, just these all depend on what day you ask me. Besides maybe the first 2, every one of them on my list, it's they're kind of interchangeable.
Mm-hmm.
I do remember seeing, I don't remember if it was part 1 or part 2. I believe with you at the drive-in. Again, I don't know if it was part 1 or part 2, but I do remember seeing one of them at the drive-in. So I mean, that was kind of a cool experience. But yeah, I mean, and these movies are fantastic as well. I would say these are more of a exploitation type movie.
Oh, sure. Easily, yeah.
Than Jackie Brown. But yeah, great. Just classic Tarantino stuff. The usual suspects show up. You get Samuel Jackson to make a cameo. You get
Madsen.
Michael Madsen.
Got it right this time.
Michael Madsen. So yeah, I really liked these movies too.
Yeah.
But number 5 on mine.
If there's one complaint, it's the ending. Even though there's nothing wrong with the ending, but after watching her go through all these people trying to get to Bill, his death was so quick and
very anticlimactic.
Yeah, and it, it would have been nice if they would have gone out with a nice big choreographed fight scene, and maybe see her on the verge of defeat, and then maybe do that move to take him out or whatever. So that's the only complaint I have. But other than that, it's really entertaining. Andrew, your thoughts on Kill Bill?
So this was the first Tarantino movie I've ever seen, and I got to see it in theaters. So it had, like you guys when you were younger, probably like seeing Reservoir Dogs or Pulp Fiction. That's the effect it had on me. It came out. I had to remember exactly when it came out, but it came out in the fall of 2003. That was my first year of college, and I was away from home, and I went and saw it at the local theater with my friends at the time, and I'm like, I've never seen anything like this movie in my life.
Yeah.
So it really blew me away. It's my number 3. Like you said, Joe, I liked the first one better than the second one. The second one kind of is a little slower. It kind of meanders. I haven't seen it though since it originally came out, 14, 15 years ago. So I need to revisit 2. I've seen 1 many times, but yeah, it changed the way I view films.
Yeah.
And also the brief animated sequences.
Yeah.
That
kind of falls in what you were saying about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Is like he just threw in some anime.
Trying everything.
I absolutely love that. And I'm not a big fan of. It's not. I don't like it. But I haven't been exposed to it as much. Japanese movies or culture. But when I saw this, I'm thinking, wow, this is really cool. Now it's like it's kind of a caricature of Japanese stuff, but it kind of opened my eyes to that.
Yep. Denver?
I debated. I went back and forth. This was at one point my number 3, and then like we were talking, they fluctuate day to day. So Kill Bill 1 came in at number 4. I think it's a masterpiece. It's by far one of his best movies. Kill Bill 2, not so much. I think because Kill Bill 1 was so amazing, the second one kind of felt lacking in comparison. So I did rank that. I put number 2 down in my 9th position. I treated them as 2 separate movies until they put out the Whole Bloody Affair. It is 2 movies in my mind. So yeah, Kill Bill, it's awesome. And what I think what I really liked about his first 3 movies were really pure crime stories, and this was something totally else. This was, he just took a left turn into a whole new realm, and I loved it. I mean, there was still obviously huge crime elements, but it wasn't kind of your typical gangster movie. So yeah, just an awesome movie.
Yeah. All right, then a few years later. Now, this is a movie that when I discuss Tarantino with people, this isn't a movie that readily comes to mind. And I think because it was released as part of a double feature, but here it is.
From Quentin Tarantino, the director of Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, and Kill Bill, comes Death Proof.
This car is 100% death proof. Only to get the benefit of it, honey, you really need to be sitting in my seat.
So this was the second part of a double feature. Robert Rodriguez did the first part, the zombie movie. What was that one called?
Planet Terror.
Planet Terror. And then Death Proof was the second half, and there were some fake trailers in between that eventually at least Machete got turned into a feature-length film.
Yep.
Still waiting for Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Now,
don't.
I remember. Don't. I remember when this came out, reading that many people in theaters across the country got up and left after Planet Terror, not knowing there was a second feature yet to play. And
those
so
are all the people that voted for Trump.
Now, I apparently I read that this was probably Tarantino's lowest grossing film, and I think that's part of the reason is people didn't quite get it. I absolutely love Death Proof. I think it's one of the top 10 car chase movies of all time. And I loved all the pop culture references in it. You could tell Tarantino was a fan. All these little things from the Challenger that the girls drive was the same car in Vanishing Point, to the license plate, which was the license plate to Steve McQueen's Bullitt Mustang. There was a yellow Mustang in the film, which was similar to the Gone in 60 Seconds original release. So I loved seeing Tarantino throw all this stuff in a blender and come out with this unique take. And there's two distinct halves of this movie. The first half is where the women are the victims of Kurt Russell and his serial killer character. And the second half, which is one of my all-time favorite movie moments, is when the women turn the tables on him and go after him.
His method is brutal. His weapon is speed. But his latest targets are about to fight back.
Let's kill this bastard.
You know I can't let you go.
I had to restrain myself. I remember sitting in a theater, and I had nobody with me. I went by myself. And when they said, let's go get this guy, I was like, what? What is happening here? And I had to restrain myself from leaping out of my seat and like cheering. That's how emotionally invested I was in this film, and I absolutely loved it. Kurt Russell was just fantastic. I mean, that should have been like an Oscar-worthy performance there. So Death Proof falls at number 4 on my list just because it speaks to me. I'm a car guy. I love car chase movies, and so that's why I rank it really, really highly on my list. So you guys rolling your eyes, shaking your head.
Just
Go
mainly
ahead,
me, I think.
Tim.
I actually this movie has grown on me so much since I bought it on Blu-ray. When I originally saw it at the theater, I remember like seeing the previews for it and being so excited for it. Originally, I thought Planet Terror was better than the Death Proof portion of it. One thing that they did was they never let on what really Death Proof was about. They advertised it as a slasher movie. So obviously you kind of thought that he was going to use the car. I mean, you know, they couldn't get away with not showing the car. And you knew he was called Stuntman Mike if you like looked into it at all. So originally I really enjoyed the Planet Terror part more. But then after I got it on Blu-ray and watched it more and more, I actually really love Death Proof, and I have it as my number 3.
Look at that.
Wow.
And
My man.
I remember
I'm leaving.
So I was at the theater. I went to the theater opening weekend. Hardly anybody there, and I was just like the whole time, I'm like, you know, looking around, like this is like one of the greatest movie experiences I've ever had.
I agree.
And you know, I don't know if people got it. You know, there was a few other people, but I was with my ex, and she walked out during the fake trailer part, and I was just like, oh my God, I'm missing all this stuff. But then once they started talking about Vanishing Point, I immediately thought of you and was like, oh my God, when I get out of here, I got to text Joe, tell him to go see this immediately. And then obviously they used the practical effects.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh my God, Joe's
you think about
mind is going to be blown
Zoe
by
Bell on the hood of
Yeah.
that car, that is not green screen. That is not CGI.
Right.
That is old world stunt filmmaking. My God, it's thrilling.
Yep.
So, Andrew, have you gotten around to seeing Death
Yes,
Proof?
I saw opening night with my buddy at Great Lakes Crossing. Originally, like Tim said, I liked the Rodriguez film better because I was expecting both films to be super, super goofy like Planet Terror.
Yeah.
And Death Proof was classic Tarantino, but I was expecting it to be as goofy as Planet Terror.
Yeah.
But of course, I still liked it. I haven't seen it since then, so it's been probably 12 years since that came out. I do need to revisit it. I do have it as my least favorite Tarantino movie. It's at the very bottom of my list.
Ah.
But that doesn't say anything because we're talking about one of the greatest directors.
Yeah.
This is the thing. I do own it on DVD, It's one of those DVDs I bought with a couple other DVDs. When,
Still in the shrink
when,
wrap?
when Blockbuster was going out of business, you know. So I need to revisit it. I have it at home. I need to take the time and to truly appreciate it. Yeah.
Denver.
This is also my least favorite
Wow.
Tarantino movie. It is number 10.
Yep.
The reason is a couple. You guys both mentioned that you like the Planet Terror better, and I 100% agree with you. And that is really the way this movie is intended to be watched, as a double feature.
Mm-hmm.
And when in that perspective, for me, it doesn't work. Planet Terror is so fast-paced, so wild, so wacky and zany, and then you get to, Death Proof, and it's like the brakes have been slammed, and you go to a crawl, and that first half of Death Proof is
so
just
dialogue heavy. Yeah.
I want to shoot myself. Now, to your point, the second half is amazing. That second half is like flawless.
Yeah.
It's a perfect second half of a movie.
Yeah.
But, I'm ranking perfect movies, not second halves of movies.
Sure.
So yeah, I would bump it down. Now, if they had condensed that opening portion, they had gotten through that really quick, the effect would have still been the same. When the gals go and hunt him down, you would have still just been rooting for him just as much. But sitting through, Planet Terror, then sitting through, that long half, by the end. Now, I did see it as a standalone. I own the Death Proof, on its own.
Yeah.
And it does work a lot better as a standalone movie.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Tarantino kind of got the shaft. I would have put Death Proof first, then Planet Terror.
Yeah, I agree.
It would have worked a lot better. But again, not a bad movie. Like you said, Zoe Bell's stunt scene was amazing. Just truly mind-blowing work there. But, also when you look at Kill Bill, just how complex and amazing that was. This was such a simple story, and it was such a, there was really not much meat to it, you know. So that's why it's my number 10.
Yeah. All right. So then, leading up to his next film, what's Tarantino going to do next? And he's like, I've always wanted to do a war, man, or a war picture. All right, man. And so we all sat there waiting for his war picture, and then he finally delivers this.
They're an American Secret Service outfit that lives deep behind enemy lines. The Germans call them the bastards.
The bastards?
Yes, because these Yanks have been them the devil.
That's about it. If you heard about us, you probably heard we ain't in the prisoner-taking business. We in the killing Nazi business. Cousin, business is a booming. Sure is.
3 days from now, Joseph Goebbels is throwing a gala premiere of one of his new movies in Paris. In attendance will be most of the German high command. Basically, we have all our rotten eggs in one basket. The objective, blow up the basket.
99999! Oh, yes.
There's something you don't know.
Which is?
Hitler is attending the premiere.
I love this movie. Again, I can't recall if Brad Pitt was nominated for an Oscar, but if he wasn't, he should have been. He was so good in this movie. I do have to admit, though, that I was not aware of the revisionist history aspect of the film and sat in a theater completely confused, looking around at other people going, that's not how it went. What is going on here? I was confused. Now I look back at it and go, okay, that's pretty brilliant. But I was a little confused. But great performances. Christoph Waltz won an Oscar for this film, and he was that opening sequence. I say this on the podcast occasionally. Sometimes when I'm watching a movie, you kind of see a moment where you go, I think they just won the Oscar. And that scene where he's sitting in the home and the family is under the floorboards, I remember thinking that performance is Oscar worthy. And sure enough, he walked away with it. Tim, your thoughts on Inglourious Bastards?
This is my number 2. And like I said, sometimes it would be my number 1, depending on what day you ask me that. I think this shows Quentin Tarantino's maturity as a filmmaker, I just sat in the theater. I mean, it didn't blow me away like Pulp Fiction did, but I just thought that it showed a lot more finesse for him as a director. And I was not familiar with Christoph Waltz at this point, and like you said, I was just like, man, this performance is just amazing. And yeah, and I don't think that I knew that it was not going to be historically accurate either. I had no problem with it. I actually loved that aspect of it.
That's the best part of the movie.
I know.
By far.
But if you're a history buff, you're like, what?
No, when they started doing what they were doing, and you saw what was happening, I was like, I wanted to jump out of my seat. I was like, okay, great. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I watched this one probably more than any of the other Tarantino movies. I go back and watch this one. I originally thought after I saw it that this was actually Tarantino's masterpiece.
Interesting. I forgot to mention it's number 7 on my list. Andrew, where does it rank on your list?
Numero uno.
Whoa! Look at you two birds
I
of
think
a
about
feather.
this and take it into account what you guys said about Pulp Fiction. This is my Pulp Fiction.
Wow.
Even more, it had a bigger effect on me than Kill Bill 1. I'm a huge history guy, and I loved what they did at the end. I loved it. Everyone in the theater when we saw it opening night there were audible gasps, when they kill Hitler, and it was one of the best movie going experiences. Now, talking about that first scene with Christoph Waltz, I watched this movie again probably a week ago, and I was keeping track of the time. That opening scene was 20 minutes long.
Oh my god!
Now, what other directors today are going to have a dialogue-heavy, tense scene opening a movie for 20 minutes?
Yeah.
No one else is going to do that.
Yeah,
except Quentin
and
Tarantino.
It was riveting. Yeah,
and then towards the end, you have the scene where he has Diane Kruger's character, Bridget Van Hammersmark, I couldn't remember her name, where he puts the shoe on and say, "Hey, does this shoe fit you?" Because remember, she was shot in the leg from the bar scene.
Yeah.
That part of the movie, it was so tense for me. And then one of my all-time favorite scenes of any movie of all time was when they're in the bar and everyone starts killing each other.
Oh, yeah.
The build-up to that, it was one of the most climactic things I've ever seen in cinema, in my opinion. I love that scene.
Now, was that the scene where things got triggered because of the hand
Yes,
gesture?
yes.
That in Europe, if you order 3 beers, you use your thumb,
Yep.
index finger, and middle
Yep.
finger.
Michael Fassbender's character is an English guy undercover.
Yeah.
He says, "I'll order 3 whiskeys."
And he holds up 3 fingers.
And the German officer sitting across from him loses his mind.
Yeah. And isn't it amazing that a guy like
Yes.
Tarantino would know that enough to make it a
Yes.
plot point
Yes.
in his movie? That's impressive.
And I love everything about this movie. I love simple things like, I know he's done this in other films, but how it's divided up into chapters and just little things here and there that I noticed when I rewatched it last week. I don't have a single complaint about this movie at all. This is my number 1. Yeah.
Wow. I don't even own this on DVD. I'm going to have to buy it and rewatch it.
Neither do I, because it's my number 8 movie.
wow.
It is one of his lesser works. It is a good return to form after Death Proof, so it's a big step back up.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is, first, I'll say the ending is amazing. Christoph Waltz was amazing. You knew, like Samuel Jackson in Pulp Fiction, this was a star-making performance. So I'll give you those 2 things. But for a movie that has Inglourious Bastards as the title, there was very little actual Inglourious Bastards in this movie.
Yeah.
So that was my first complaint. I thought the Brad Pitt stuff was awesome.
Yeah.
Wanted way more of it. I was like, who's this French chick running around? That opening scene is amazing, but the rest of her storyline, I really didn't care that much about. It was Tarantino reliving his film fantasy, she's running a theater in the projection booth and all this stuff. That was just, ego stroking time for himself there. And that whole Mike Myers scene, you could have taken that right out of the movie, all that stuff, and you wouldn't have missed a beat. So I'm not one that thinks that Tarantino, goes on too much. I like some of the longer, more involved stuff, but this one is definitely could have been cut way back.
Yeah.
Could have had more bastards. So yeah, it's again great movie. I loved all of his Tarantino's movies, but this is low on my list.
I don't know this for a fact, but the reason I think that he did that with the bastards and didn't show them as much and make the whole focal point about them is because it's almost like a legend. I feel that the movie's almost like the legend of those guys being told.
Well, the title's
So it's not
Inglourious
like-
Bastards. The whole trailer, it's all Inglourious Bastards. You know, so again, I'm not saying that it's a bad movie. I'm just saying I wanted more of them.
Right.
To me, they were the best part of the movie. And
Well,
I
this was his
disappointed.
homage to Dirty Dozen and stuff, so it seems like it could have been more of that, but it's
More
just a
dirty
part
or
of it.
dozen-y.
Exactly. Yeah.
But that's what he does. He always makes you think that it's going to be a
Right.
certain way.
Well, as
and
long
then-
as he
and then
delivers,
changes
if
it up
he
on you.
can change it up, but as long as that change brings the goods, I just didn't feel that it brought the goods. You know.
Right.
And back to Christoph Waltz's character, Colonel Landa. He's up there with Darth Vader and
one of the
Dennis
all-time
Hopper's
best.
character from Blue Velvet as one of my favorite villains.
I 100%
Yeah.
agree, for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah, if it had been Christoph Waltz facing off against Brad Pitt and the
yeah.
Bastards, you know, I would have been in movie heaven.
Yeah, yeah. All right, then 3 years later, he follows up with his Western, or his first Western. And this one cracked my top 5.
They called my wife. They sold her. But I don't know who to. Calvin Candy. That's the repellent gentleman who owns her.
Broomhilda is my property, and I can choose to do with my property whatever I so desire.
Help me find the Brittle brothers, and I'll take you to rescue your wife. Let's get to it.
My name is Dr. King Schultz. This is my valet, Django.
Come on over. We got us a fight going on that's a good bit of fun. Why'd you dig him up?
A fortuitous turn of events brought Django and myself together. Move it.
Well, I've heard tell about you. You got me curious.
I'm curious what makes you so curious.
Django Unchained, for me, is such a satisfying movie and probably the closest thing that he produced that's a crowd pleaser. I mean, here's a subject, you know, of slavery that hasn't been looked at or tackled in this way, to have the slave don the Western gear and get revenge. Like, it was so satisfying to me, and the performances were amazing. And I was disappointed that Leonardo DiCaprio did not win an Oscar for this role, because it was unlike anything we had seen Leo do before, and his character was riveting. And of course, Christoph Waltz comes back for this film. I love this movie. It came in at number 5 for me on Tarantino's top 10. I just found this movie so entertaining and so satisfying, and again, all the little things that Tarantino, you know, peppered throughout the film, from, you know, the camera like zooming in on the action and stuff like that, which is a throwback to the 60s, 70s exploitation films. And I love this movie. Tim, what are your thoughts on Django Unchained?
This is my number 6, and for whatever reason, I did not go see it at the theater, and I'm kind of kicking myself.
Racist.
Yeah. So, you know, it might have been because of the subject matter.
Yeah.
You know, where thinking what I knew, again, thinking what the subject matter was going to be.
Yeah, it's hard to have
just
fun
like
at a slavery movie.
Right, exactly.
You
So
would
I think
yeah.
that was probably the reason why I didn't go. But then when I finally did watch it, I loved it. And you know, it's another one that I have not bought yet, but I probably will eventually. But yeah, once I saw it, I was like, yeah, you know, I should have known better.
The question,
than to not
how
go see
dare
it.
you question Tarantino?
Exactly. Great performances all around. The funny thing is, I had totally forgot in the beginning when Christoph Waltz has the gun come out of his sleeve.
Yeah.
I had totally forgot about that part when he finally does it again.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
shoots he shot DiCaprio, right?
Yep.
Yep. And I totally forgot about that. So I was like, oh man, like it's just great, like how Tarantino can do that. Like have that in the beginning, go through the movie, and you're not even thinking about that, and then when it pops back up, you're like surprised.
Yeah.
Now you say that, you know what that reminds me of in Once Upon a Time, the flamethrower.
Oh yeah, introducing it earlier.
Yep.
You know that I think we've talked about this on the podcast before, that there's kind of this rule in movies that if there's a scene where there's a shotgun hanging above a mantle, you better damn well use that shotgun somewhere in the movie.
If you're gonna plant the seed, that thing better grow. you
Yeah.
know.
And so, Tarantino's great at introducing something.
And his
early on
movies
and
are so
hanging
long that you can easily forget things that happened at the
Yep.
beginning.
Yeah. Andrew, your thoughts on Django?
Like you said, it's a big crowd pleaser. It's one of those movies, like it's everything I expected it to be. It hit every single beat that I had expectations for. I have it as number 6. It was great to see Christoph Waltz come back a couple years later, like from Inglourious Basterds, but to play a good guy.
Yeah, yeah.
You want it from a filmgoer's point of view. You want to see actors do different things, even if they're in the same director's movies. You want to see them do different things. And then I may be wrong, but is this the first time we've seen Leo as a villain?
Yeah, that's why I said earlier that it was unlike anything we had seen him do.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess he was. I don't know if you could call him a villain in the Tom Hanks movie Catch Me If You Can.
Yeah,
he was a scoundrel. Well, I don't know if you'd call him a villain.
No,
but
I don't.
Yeah,
think
this
so,
is the first time we saw that dark side.
A
of
hateful
Leo.
character.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah. I loved every aspect of it. Really, I don't really have any complaints about the movie. Like you said, some parts were disturbing, like what they do with Kerry Washington.
Yeah, some of it's hard to watch, but it serves a purpose. I don't think it was gratuitous.
Something interesting. At the time after I'd seen it, I had asked a couple of my black coworkers if they had seen it, and a couple of them had, and nobody liked it. They thought it was.
Well, I guess that's a complaint that some people have of the film, is they sort of watered down. Or I don't know if I want to say watered down, but they turned such a dark part of American history into light entertainment almost, and I can kind of see why.
That was their complaint, and I'm like, oh, from a white guy's point of view, suburban white guy's point of view, I didn't think of that, but now that you say that, that's kind of true. But
and that's kind of followed Tarantino throughout his career, that like the use of the N-word and racial issues have plagued him. And
I don't think he's ever meant it to be, to be anything negative, but that's just
he claims that he grew up in a black neighborhood.
Sure.
And that's just how everybody talked, himself included, and so he can incorporate. So right or wrong, that's his motivation.
Yeah.
But if there is a gratuitous ending to any of his movies, a gratuitous happy ending, this has got to be it.
Yeah.
I mean, with him, having the horse
right
dance around and all that stuff at the very end.
Yeah.
That surprised me that it ended that way. I liked it, but I was like, oh, okay, you're going there with it.
So we all put this in the middle of our list. Denver, where does it fall on
I'm right
your
there
list?
with you guys. I have it at number 5 as well.
Okay.
And it was, to me, it was a nearly flawless film. I really had no issues with it. Where I was slightly disappointed, just slightly, with Inglourious Basterds, to me, I was like, oh man, this is like seamless and near perfect. And I just like the fact that Tarantino had the balls to make, basically a blaxploitation movie about slavery.
Right, revenge film.
Yeah, so it was like, I was like, all the, more power. And then, like Andrew said about Christoph Waltz, you love to hate him in Inglourious Basterds. This one, you just love him, you know? So that was awesome.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that he brought in some fresh blood. He brought in Jamie Foxx and DiCaprio, people he hadn't worked with before. So, but then still had Sam Jackson in another great villainous role, So it was like, to me, it was the perfect balance of old Tarantino with new Tarantino.
Yep.
So surprisingly, 3 years later, Tarantino followed up his Western with another Western.
Here's Daisy Domergue.
She's wanted dead or alive for murder. When that sun comes out, I'm taking this woman to hang. Is there anybody here committed to stopping me from doing that?
One of them fellas is not what he says he is.
Move a little strange, you're gonna get a bullet. Not a warning, not a question. A bullet.
The Hateful Eight came out in 2015, and I have not seen this film yet.
What? Shit.
For several reasons.
Hit stop. Go watch it. We'll pick it back up.
Reviews were not great. When I would ask people about it, they said, I don't know if it's your kind of movie, Joe. It's really ultra violent and kind of mean-spirited, and it just didn't seem like the kind of movie
It's dark.
that
It's
I wanted to
definitely dark.
immerse myself in at that point. And I've just never, there have been times where I've been at a Second and Charles looking at DVDs, and I'll see it and I'll stare at it, and I'm like, I can't bring myself to get it. I'm gonna watch it just so I can complete my Tarantino experience, but I can't offer my opinion on it right now, so I'm going to give way to you guys. Tim, your review of Hateful Eight.
This is actually my least favorite Tarantino movie, so it ranks as number 9 on mine because Kill Bill 1 and 2 are combined, so I do not have a number 10. I did not see this at the theater. I planned on seeing it at the theater. Again, I don't know why I didn't. So I didn't see it till it came out on DVD, and I was not upset like I was with Django that I did not see it, mainly because I felt all that it was a rehash of Reservoir Dogs ultimately, but just with a Western setting. Almost, Reservoir Dogs pretty much takes place in a garage.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This movie pretty much took place in the
cabin.
What was it?
Cabin.
Haberdashery.
Yep.
Yeah, the cabin thing.
Yeah.
So, again, not a bad movie. It's Tarantino, but even the ending, I don't know. There's some nice twists and turns in it that kind of surprise you.
Some great twists.
And some, yeah, there are definitely. But yeah, it's just not. It's my least favorite.
Andrew, where does it fall on your list?
It's my second to least favorite, right? Just above Death Proof. It kind of felt like he had ran out of a little bit of original. Like you said, it is. Now that I think about it, it's kind of a lot like Reservoir Dogs. It's not Tarantino at his best. It just
better than Death Proof.
It's something about it that slightly turned me off a little bit. I think it's more of like the opposite of Once Upon a Time, whereas that movie's more. It's got some sweet elements to it.
Yeah.
This movie is just. It's the other end of the spectrum.
Well, it's called The Hateful Eight,
Yes.
not
Yeah.
the Love and Peace Eight.
I did see it either opening day or the second day it was out at the MJR in Troy, and they have I think it's either the first or second largest screen in the state. So that was cool. There are some beautiful long shots of the wilderness and the snow, and I thought that was beautiful.
Well, that was one of the criticisms I read of the movie is Tarantino had used this special camera or whatever.
Yeah.
For
70
like
millimeter.
and then the whole thing is set in the confined spaces of this cabin. So it wasn't
there's some
used to its
extremes
fullest.
in
Yeah.
there. The shots, the cinematography is gorgeous. I've only seen it that one time though when it originally came out. I like we said before, some of these we need to revisit to maybe have a better appreciation for. But it's not one of those movies that I like really recommended to people, like I did most of the other ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Denver, where's it fall on your list?
I loved it. It came very close behind Django because it delivered on what it promised. It said it was the Hateful Eight. These were a bunch of bastards, you know, to borrow another title. These guys were hateful and they were evil and they were corrupt. But what I found refreshing is I looked at it totally different. This was more of almost like a whodunit. It was like Tarantino's version of Agatha Christie because there's lots of mystery and you're trying to figure things out. And it's more much more of a character study than a lot of his other movies because it is one setting and there is a lot of dialogue. You're really digging in. And where race was always kind of, an element, it wasn't like Tarantino never really explored it. It was just always there. Whereas this movie, you got right after the Civil War, you got people who were slaves, you got people who fought on the South, and so it was almost like he was addressing the things of Django, like, okay, here's the aftermath, here's really what set our country on its next course for the 100 next years or so. So to me, I found it to be fascinating, loved it. Because it is one of his more unpleasant movies, I wouldn't rank it as one of my favorites, one of his best. But if you guys are going to rewatch it, Netflix has broken this movie up into episodes.
Okay.
So what they did was it was a long movie, but they made it even longer. Added new scenes in, and I want to say it's in 4 or 5 different episodes.
Huh, really? I came across it on my Netflix queue, but I didn't click on it to see if.
And that might actually
okay.
be a
I guess.
better way to watch it.
Yeah.
Because there are kind of distinct parts of the movie. There's like the stagecoach part at the beginning, and then there's, the stuff inside the cabin. Then there's the big twist reveal, and it kind of all changes. And I just love the fact, I don't want to spoil it for you, but I thought Kurt Russell was the lead in the movie, and he is definitely not, which I was shocked in the way that they revealed it was kind of shocking, So, for me, it checked off a lot of the boxes, and I loved it.
I'll have to check it out maybe this weekend. And then of course, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He's claiming it might be his last movie, but then there's talk about him maybe doing a Star Trek movie. Interestingly, when he was on Jimmy Kimmel recently, Kimmel brought it up the Star Trek thing, but before Tarantino can respond, he was interrupted by Margot Robbie and Leo and Brad. They came out and disrupted, and I couldn't help but wonder if that was deliberate to not address the elephant in the room. So will we see Tarantino do a sci-fi movie? It would be intriguing. I'd like to see it. Now, he said, he's not going to stop creating. As a matter of fact, I heard one rumor that he might take Bounty Law and maybe produce that as a series.
I'd love to see
and
him
I'm
do
like,
a TV show.
Can you imagine like a 60s
awesome.
throwback Western with the Tarantino spin on it?
As long as Brad Pitt does the stunt work in it, I'll be all for it.
Right. So I hope it's not Tarantino's last movie, but it would be a sweet movie for him to hang his hat on and end his directing career
It
on.
almost feels like a career-ending movie because there are so many, it's a huge part of the movie is a Western, like his previous 2 movies before that. And there is a crime element aspect to it. So it does kind of feel like this career-encompassing movie. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was.
Yeah.
I hope not. But.
And I neglected to mention earlier when we were discussing it, back in October 2018, I was on Hollywood Boulevard watching Tarantino direct some scenes from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Excuse me. And now having seen the movie, knowing that I saw Cliff Booth driving his blue Carmen Ghia, and I saw Rick in their Cadillac Coupe de Ville, and I saw those characters on set on Hollywood Boulevard. That's something I will never forget. That's like saying, you watched Travolta and Sam Jackson in costume and character, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that I got to watch them do their thing and Tarantino direct them is just something I'll never forget. And I'll
Have
always
they released
treasure.
die-cast versions of those cars?
Well,
Or do
not
they exist?
officially, but Matchbox has a powder blue Carmen Ghia with a black interior, same hubs on it and everything. It looks exactly like that. As far as the Cadillac Coupe de Ville goes, a company called Jada released the Reservoir Dogs Cadillac Coupe de Ville, which is the same car in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood because it's owned by Michael Madsen. It's
Another callback to an earlier
Exactly.
movie. So, yeah.
Exactly. So you can purchase those cars if you want them. All right, that pretty much wraps up our.
Where
our
would you rank
Tarantino-
it?
Oh yeah, we need to talk about it. Because of the topic, because of the characters, came in at number 3 for me, behind Kill Bill. Tim, where does it fall on your list?
As I said, I did not immediately love it. I need to see it again, so it's actually number 7 on mine.
Okay, Andrew.
I have it right in the middle, number 5 for me.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm with you. It's number 3.
Awesome.
So,
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved it.
All right, if you haven't seen it, hopefully we didn't ruin it for you, but go out and see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think most of us agree it's one of Tarantino's best.
Mm-hmm.
So check it out. And guys, thanks for joining me on this Tarantino retrospective. And we'll see you next time on Movies for Dumb Guys.